Bruce Wayne and Jason Todd have nearly the exact same circumstances. They are both hurt boys who have been hurt by the world and then in the future hurt each other as vigilantes. They used to get along because they are so similar and have very similar traits. And because they still share these traits, because they still have these traits, I truly believe that they still might be able to get along in the future as well. But with everything going on in the comics thus far, with all the examples of Bruce and Jason just coming to a head, usually with Bruce as the antagonist, but in the beginning it was all Jason as the antagonist, really. Seeing this has made loads of fans question whether they ever truly got along, whether they ever really had that deep relationship, and whether they could ever go back to it, with most Red Hood fans saying absolutely not, and most Batman exclusive fans saying absolutely not. Me though, I disagree with both camps. I am an absolute lover of their relationship. Thus, I am here to tell you and remind some of you 3 reasons why they did get along and why they still can. And just before I get into it, hi, I'm Inozia. I usually use psychology and humor to discuss fiction, and if you like this video, please interact with it some way, somehow, like, subscribe, whatever you want to do, comment, so that the YouTube algorithm doesn't toss me aside like a used tampon. Thank you. Let's go. Some of us crave sleep. Some of us crave desserts. Some of us crave never having to work another day in their lives, but getting paid all the same. But Bruce and Jason mutually have a craving for knowledge. John Zimmer's book in 2003 called The Passion to Learn states that every scientist has to go out of their way to learn about the unknown. Researchers will never get anywhere unless they are willing and able to become aware of this knowledge, locate it, and take steps to learn it for themselves. These 2 hurt boys have the spirit of the scientists that Zimmons described, and they both crave this knowledge, they both seek this knowledge, they both look into the unknown through the same exact ways. One, they crave to understand how to train, how to better their body. They crave to learn from teachers better than themselves to become strong fighters, to protect others. This is a craving of understanding, craving of knowledge that they both shared relentlessly to the point of obsession. You can see Bruce is traveling across the world to towers of monks and to Russia and everywhere he goes because he wants to make Gotham a better place. And then you see in Red Hood Lost Days where he's getting trained across the world in a similar manner, going to many different teachers that Talia al Ghul provides for him to learn from. And both of them seek this out themselves for the same reason, to really be able to protect their city, because they crave the knowledge to be better and bigger than themselves and to know more than themselves. Another method, another way that both of them crave knowledge, both of them seek knowledge out, is through investigation. They are both detectives, exceptional detectives, and the act of being a detective, of solving a crime, involves finding information, involves understanding people. It involves looking at a crime scene and putting the pieces together. Both of them have that spirit as well. You see it in their passion to follow through with cases, their passion to learn about every angle of a certain case that they are assigned to or they're working towards. And it is honestly something that they share fiercely. You know, that relentless want to get to the bottom of that case really does just highlight how much they both crave to learn, crave information, crave to be able to use this information for the greater good. And last but not least, the last mode and really big way that they show, both of them show that they are seekers of knowledge is, well, through relaxation. Both of them are big book readers. Jason to a point of meme, to a point of people questioning how authentic it is. You know, we always hear about the Pride and Prejudice, but why didn't he read anything else? He might have read, you know, the classics, Shakespeare, other things, poems, you know. That's very well known, but it's very clear and obvious that Bruce is also a reader, a casual reader, somebody who reads in their spare time to just learn more things. He has so much knowledge that he's seeked out in his spare time, and so much things things that he's learned just for the sake of a date or for a friend or for something casual. You know, you see him relaxing with a good book in some panels and stuff. And of course, the ridiculous library that he's utilized before, and the fact that he reads the newspaper. Bruce and Jason, both of them, can be seen often reading for pleasure or mentioning that they've read for pleasure, and that shows and fundamentally proves that both of them share this trait. They both seek knowledge out and crave knowledge to the point of it being maybe even their detriment. It just really drives them and helps them to keep doing what they need to do to help people and themselves and each other. But you might be wondering, what does this have to do with their relationship? I mean, sure, they share a trait, but why does that make them get along? Well, it means that they both have inquisitive minds that allow them to thrive in each other's company. It means that they welcome being taught by each other. I mean, most of the time, of course, it's just Bruce being a teacher and Jason being the learner. And Jason, of course, is an active participant because he wants to learn, and Bruce is an active participant because he wants to share his knowledge because he thinks it's valuable. But there's also the dynamic of Jason being able to guide Bruce. Jason isn't what Dick is. He's not an expert gymnast, he's not an Olympic level acrobat, but what he is someone who knows the street life in Gotham way better than Bruce ever could, and is someone who has valuable knowledge that he could also give along to Bruce. And so sometimes Jason is actually giving and passing along that information to Bruce or to Dick or to somebody else. And not just that, there's also the fact that Bruce is Jason's parent. And I've seen online for different topics, especially with physical contact and certain things like that, where parents are saying that they are led by their children. They follow their children's example when it comes to certain things. And as a teacher, as somebody helping your student, your child, you have to adjust to your student. You have to adjust to the person you're teaching, because they will be able to teach you certain things about how to teach and about what you should be teaching, what they need to know. Bruce has been shown to adjust to Jason's learning ability, to adjust to how Jason needs to learn and be taught, and to follow where Jason's boundaries are as best he can, especially when mostly talking when he's young. And so in those two ways, you know, with the streets and with the condition of being a child with a parent, Jason is also teaching Bruce, and Bruce is soaking up this information. But that's not the only reason they get along. I mean, it's not even the most important reason they get along, because father-son relationships aren't only built on learning, they're built on understanding too. You might be surprised, but being burnt at a young age and seeing graphic violence at a young age does make some people a bit hesitant to rejoin the situations that kind of caused them to be there, or that they view to have caused them to be there. And this is really why I think that neither of them love having anyone in their space, and that they find the most comfort without anyone around them. If they were anyone else but Jason and Bruce, I would say that it's their trauma. You know, it's their grief that caused them both to be so reclusive. But this reclusion, this comfort that both of them feel being alone, is not something that had to do with their tragic backstories. It's very clear to me, actually, that they were always introverted characters. Oxford Languages calls an introvert a shy, reticent person. Before you go to the comments to tell me that that's not what introversion is, I know. Don't worry, girl. I did psychology, okay? And because I did, I want to talk to you about something a bit more complicated than just extroversion and introversion when considering Bruce and Jason's introversion. The idea of the introvert, ambivert, extrovert spectrum existed in 1923 when the term
ambivert
was actually coined. It says that most people aren't exactly on the one or other extreme, they are just somewhere in between, and that this is determined by the turning of your libido. And by libido, I mean overall life energy, not anything else. But that doesn't mean that you can't be one or the other, just that you're not gonna fall 100% introvert or 100% extrovert. With this in mind, Petrick's 2022 paper argues that you can actually do mental training to acquire different traits from either side of the spectrum, and by having those different traits doesn't mean you're not an extrovert, or more relevant, an introvert. Because while introverts can be, fun at parties, for lack of a better analogy, introverts turn inward. Introverts think, feel, and act in ways that suggest the subject is the prime motivating factor. They are predominantly interested in one's own mental self. And that isn't to say that they don't care about other people, but it is there as a more easy definition for you to understand when I say that Jason and Bruce were born introverts. But I'm not just going to say this to you. Let me give you some examples of why I really do think this. So starting with Jason, he stayed home with his mum when he was young, and he had minimal attachments with people in the alley when he was young. How could he? It wasn't a very welcoming environment. It wasn't an environment where he could go out and just trust anyone willy-nilly. It wasn't an environment where he had much opportunity to be social if it wasn't for the sake of survival. So Jason learned from early on and preferred and felt better when he only had himself and maybe his mum to worry about, because he wasn't used to, and he never really did get to develop those skills until living with Bruce, to know how to feel truly comfortable around others, to know how to truly get his energy from being around others who would worry him and sap his energy, if you understand what I'm saying. Similarly, in the entirely opposite side of the spectrum, to the point where it's actually a full circle, Bruce was the same. He was a social recluse because he was so incredibly rich, because people couldn't get close to him. How could he trust people? It's the exact same thing. He liked people, sure, or he was nice to people, sure, but he couldn't really believe that they didn't have any ill intentions around him. He couldn't ever truly feel comfortable around people who weren't in his inner circle. And that is pretty much the same as how Jason felt. It's the same stress, it's the same sapping of life energy to be on edge, to be uncomfortable around people when there are so many factors you can't control. Both of them felt that, both of them suffered from that, and that shaped both of their characters from the very beginning, before they even met each other or any trauma even happened. Now, using Dick as a foil or a contrast really does just emphasize what I mean, because if you think about Dick Grayson, who was raised in a circus, right, and how he was raised around so many people, and how he learned to trust everyone around him, in comparison, how he learned that everybody cared about him, that being around other people was a good thing, that it was a comforting thing, it was an energizing thing. Because if you can make everyone your loved one, then what's the problem being around other people? Why would I not want to be around other people? It formed his character, and he could have easily changed. With the traumatic event, with the fact that he went to juvie, he could have changed dramatically to be a more reclusive person just for the sake of his own protection, but he didn't. And because of Bruce and Alfred taking him in, through being Robin, through being at Wayne Manor, he was able to go back to how he was in essence. He was able to love people again. He was able to be the most liked person in DC. Fans love him, but also characters in DC love him too. He is the universal constant of good, right? And that is because he was able to heal. And that's the thing, because you would expect that the same thing might happen to Jason, but it didn't. Jason never changed dramatically. I know some people argue that he could have been a thug without Bruce and stuff like that, and there is some merit. I don't like saying that there's no merit to that, because there is, but I don't think Jason would have ever been someone bad. He never would have been that terrible, because Jason fundamentally from the beginning was a good person. He was, though, always a reclusive person, and so no matter what happened at Wayne Manor, he never really changed that much, because he was already himself, and Bruce understood that. You see where I'm going with this? Bruce is the same in that way. He understands those boys for what they were. Bruce understands that Jason is like him, and he understands that there are times where that could be a good thing, and he doesn't try to force Jason to be somebody else. He forces maybe, or he thinks of Robin maybe should be a bit more like the previous Robin, but he doesn't force Jason to be someone else, to be more social, to be more open. He works with Jason's insecurities and he works with Jason's trust issues because he understands where Jason is coming from, especially because they are both introverted and they both look inside first because they had upbringings which facilitated that introversion. So yeah, they got along because not only do they help each other to learn, but they are both introverted and therefore can understand certain aspects of each other's characters that perhaps others just can't. But again, this is too limited. What I've described is a friend you study with. A father-son relationship doesn't just have those factors. It can't be made with those factors. No, because the most important reason why Jason and Bruce got along was because they both had compassion. When you look at Bruce or Jason at their worst, beating the stuffing out of a mugger or a drug dealer, you don't think, oh my god, they're so caring, oh, so kind. You don't think these words, right? But what if I told you that these two characters share this same flaw, that they are only so aggressive because they are so kind, and that the only people they're not actually ever kind to, really, is themselves. Ooh. Both Jason and Bruce push their bodies to the limits. They push their minds to the limits. They're very self-reproaching and they measure themselves up to impossible standards. I mean, pushing their bodies, pushing their minds, often it is when they're solving a case on the job. You know, when they're self-reproaching themselves, when they're really criticizing themselves inwardly, it's often when working with other people or failing to save somebody or not having a good plan, stuff like that, which really does show when they are so overly critical of themselves and measuring themselves up to impossible standards. I mean, that is bar of the course. Jason, of course, is measuring himself up to Bruce, while Bruce himself is measuring himself up to different members of the league. He's measuring himself up to the people he respects more and finds more competent than himself. And both of them really do struggle with showing compassion to themselves, but that does not at all mean they don't have compassion. In fact, they are overflowing with compassion despite how it comes out. Their compassion towards others is often when it's with victims. You know, we're seeing how they care for victims, how they kill or spare certain antagonistic people, so villains, or just frankly just people on the streets with a gun, you know, how they treat them harshly and in their different ways. It's for the victims. They're heroic using their various methods, but they're still heroes to me, really. And they're heroes not just to the victims, but if we're talking about others, we're talking about the family. You know, we're talking about how they are heroes to Dick, and they try to, both of them in their own way, to be close with him. They both have a tremendous respect for him. They're caring towards Alfred, of course. Both of them have their moments with him. They're caring towards Tim in different ways, but they try, you know, they try to be compassionate, and most of the time a lot of that compassion even just comes through their thoughts and their actions, if the characters are not being assassinated by certain writers, of course. And if we're talking about others in a video about Jason and Bruce getting along, let's talk about how they are compassionate towards each other. They joke around together. That was a lot of their thing when Jason was young. All the jokes he made, you know, how casual they were with each other, how fun it was just to watch them act as Batman and Robin, you know, rejuvenated. It's the first time that really we get the idols Batman and Robin back, and that kind of energy was really, really good. And we also had them protecting each other, you know, verbally and physically. We had Jason and Bruce really being there for each other, being somebody to defend the other person at all times, for whatever reason it had to be, because they were a unit, because they had each other's backs. And last but not least, they idolized each other. You know, both Jason and Bruce have been shown to idolize each other. Jason's the easy example. He's like, I think I saw this panel the other day, something about how you guys will never be able to beat Batman, he's the best there ever was, and stuff like that. Clearly Jason still idolizes Bruce no matter how many grievances he has with the man. But then there's also Bruce, who literally put Jason on a pedestal with, I think, Alfred's help or something like that, to say that he was a good soldier. Literally puts Jason in his mind. I think there was also a scene where Jason was appearing in Bruce's imagination, this warped mind place where he was imagining his own parents with Dick's parents, and then Jason was there as well. And it's just another show of how Jason is someone that Bruce just puts on a pedestal. He idolizes him. He thinks of, he's the perfect son and I messed up. You know, that's kind of how he sees Jason for a very long time in comic history. He thought Jason was still a valuable person, still someone worthy of love. Evidently, he loves the hell out of Jason. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had that fallout in the beginning. Any of the fallouts wouldn't have happened if they didn't care about each other. So yeah, that's them showing their compassion towards each other and towards others and not towards themselves. It's something that they share so closely. Both of them are the exact same in this aspect as well. And this is really the final reason and the most important reason of why these characters really actually did get along and why they had a good relationship. In conclusion, Bruce Wayne and Jason Todd really got along because they learned from each other. They understood each other, and because they cared for themselves, the world, and each other to the same or very similar degrees. This is intentional. You know, the writers wanted Jason to replace Dick. That was literally the point he was introduced for. It kind of failed, so they did try to differentiate him in a reboot, you know, later on, and they even ended up creating unique conflicts by doing this, because while making them very similar, they did have therefore their own share of unique conflicts that Dick just couldn't relate to. But those conflicts doesn't mean that Bruce and Jason can't get along even now. Their shared traits that made it easy for them to get along in their youth are the same now as they've ever been. The problem is not that Bruce Wayne and Jason Todd can't get along, because why couldn't they? They're the exact same. But because their alter egos can't get along. And that's a problem that I will address in a follow-up video. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this one. If you want to do one thing, then subscribe. Otherwise, check out my other videos and comment down below if you disagree or agree, so we can have a chat about it in the comments. Then I say okay, goodbye, Janyoing! And I hope you like this video. This was something I really did want to talk about because of how many people are like, oh, Jason and Bruce never actually got along, actually. I'm like, bro, what? They were crafted. They were carefully handcrafted to get along. They share so many common traits and they really do suit each other. So I don't know what you're talking about. So I just made this video. And yeah, once again, they can still easily get along as people right now. It's just because their alter egos have a very big difference in opinion and traits that is causing most of the conflict, which I will tackle in a later video. So subscribe. I think I've said subscribe like 3 times. So if you haven't done it, why? Could you do it? I'm gonna stop. This is so cringe. Okay, have a good day, or night, or afternoon, whenever you're watching this. Yeah. And thank you for just checking out the video. I really appreciate it.